Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the Cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin, whale games. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and check out Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. You can also find a link to that in the description below. We do have a sale going on right now. Let's go ahead and jump in. So, we like to occasionally come in and see what the whales are doing. Are they accumulating? Are they not? Now, remember, one of the things I've mentioned before is that inflows and outflows of these addresses do not necessarily mean buys and sells, but there still are interesting trends that I think we can learn from by looking to see what, in fact, the whales are doing. Now, normally we immediately go check in with whale number 3. However, there's a little bit more important stuff going on right now, so we'll come in and check in with whale number 3 a little bit later. Let's go check in on some of his friends a little bit further down the list. And really, what we need to do is we need to go to the second page. We've talked about this before. There's a series of addresses that are between, say, 103, say 103 and 114. Whales 103 through 114. It's likely the same person because they tend to do things on the same day. But there are a series of wallets. Okay, you can see them right here. I'll highlight them for you. And the reason these wallets are interesting, they all have 9,790 Bitcoin in them a piece, which is at the current price approximately $288.5 million. It represents about 0.05% of the entire supply in each wallet. Now, the reason these guys are interesting is because their very first inflow was December 4th of 2018. So if you go look, December 4th of 2018, 1,400 Bitcoin came in, followed by 3,800 Bitcoin, followed by 2,800 Bitcoin, all on the same day. And there's a lot of wallets that look like that. That's why it's probably the same person. But look at all this Bitcoin that came in at that time. Now, why is that interesting? Well, the reason why December 4th of 2018 is interesting is because if you actually go back to December 4th of 2018, let's look at the daily time scale here, or the daily time frame, so we can actually pinpoint this down. So December 4th of 2018 came relatively close to the market cycle bottom. Did not come at the bottom, but it did come relatively close to it. You can see that they were ahead of the bottom by approximately 2 weeks, and it went about 17 or 18% further down. Okay, so they bought in 2018. They also bought in July of 2021. So if we take a look, you can see that in fact a lot of these wallets added more Bitcoin July 16th and July 17th of 2021. Now, the reason why that is interesting is because if you go to July 16th and July 17th of 2021, what you'll notice is that it came relatively close to the bottom, right? So some of the sales were on the 17th, which is this yellow line. And then if I scoot it over one day, that is on the 16th. So they came relatively close to the bottom. They missed the bottom by about 6 days or so, 5 or 6 days, and they were off by about 7 or 8%. And the reason why we're following this so closely, we've mentioned these in many of the whale game videos in the past. The reason why I'm somewhat intrigued is because, once again, whales 103 to 114 have decided to buy the dip. So if you go look at them, we'll just click on a few of them. You can see that this address has not bought anything since late July of 2021. And actually on the 27th of 2021, a little bit later than the others, they just had an inflow of 1,614 Bitcoin. If we are in and click on another address, you can see that, again, they were pretty quiet since July 19th, and they just had an inflow of 109 Bitcoin. If we go maybe click on whale number 114, you can see that they've been relatively quiet since July 22nd, and then they just had another inflow of 243 Bitcoin. So the reason why I'm discussing all this is because you have these whales that haven't really bought that frequently. You know, there are some larger players that don't play the same games you and I play necessarily, right? They don't DCA. They don't have time for that, right? they come in and they try to buy when they think there's a good deal in the market, and when they don't think it's a good deal, they probably just ignore it and they just let it do its own thing. But you can at least see that they have had an inflow here on several different of these addresses, while it's 103 to 114, all of them coming in to have several, have at least that one inflow on today, Saturday, May 14th. And I just find it interesting because, again, this is something we followed for a long time to see when it was going to happen. And here you can see it has happened yet again. Now, what about some other whales? I will say, not all whales are accumulating. So I don't want to give that impression. It wouldn't make sense if all of them were. There's always people that are buying and selling. But if we go check in on whale number 3, you can see that recently they've been getting back into the market a little bit. Although these 1,500 Bitcoin outflows tend to be a lot larger than some of the inflows they have. Okay, so here's like a 1,500 Bitcoin outflow, and then a 64 Bitcoin inflow, followed by another 1,000, followed by another 1,000, and then a lot of smaller moves. And even this one had a move of 500 Bitcoin in at approximately 28.9K today, right? So this one's all over the place. However, you can see that their balance in Bitcoin has been slowly going higher, right? It's been slowly going higher. If we continue looking, I don't want to show you, just the good news, because there certainly are some wallets in here that have been systematically selling. I believe this is one of them, whale number 34. I check in on whale number 34 quite frequently, and you can see that they don't have the conviction that some of the other whales have. They've been systematically offloading 500 Bitcoin, several times a week for quite a while now. Okay, and in fact, even today they offloaded another 500 Bitcoin. So perhaps this whale is selling to another whale to some degree, and you can see that they had 500 Bitcoin go out at 28.9K. Now, the other thing that's interesting is that this whale really started to get into Bitcoin for the very first time on August 23rd of 2021 at 50K, and then they bought heavily. I mean, look at these buys. I mean, these are thousands of Bitcoin buys. And they bought heavily throughout the upper 40s and 50s. And you can see that they actually offloaded some here at once it dumped to 43 during the September drop, which I don't really understand why they didn't get the memo. September is usually not a great month, but perhaps they panic sold. And then here you can see a few more offloads at 43 to 44K. And then again, they didn't really do anything until a little bit later. And they kept selling at 62, 61, and 60. And then really since November, they've just been systematically offloading. So it's like they had the conviction once upon a time, and now that conviction is completely gone. And if you are to trust the on-chain data, they have lost approximately $586.5 million. If we continue on, we could always go look at a few other ones. Here's another wallet. You can see that this one has... they had been loading up here for a little while, but there's also a couple of outflows as well. Just to randomly go down and click on a few other ones. Here's wallet number 76. This one has, there are some inflows, but it appears the outflows are more. If you go look at the balance in Bitcoin, which is the blue line, it has been actually coming down throughout April and May. So again, the point is that there really isn't a necessarily one whale that's going to tell you everything that there is to do. I do think it's interesting that if you look at this whale and you look at, say, the balance in Bitcoin, forget about US dollars, but think about it in terms of Bitcoin, they're actually, they sort of increase it as the price increases. When it levels out, they stop. It seems like they really stop accumulating, and when it starts going down, their balance in Bitcoin goes down. Now, obviously, their balance in US dollars would go down, but their balance in terms of its Bitcoin denomination is going down, and you can see it's just all sprinkled with inflows and outflows, right? So, you can look at a lot of these wallets, right? I mean, there's so many different wallets that you can look at. Here's a lot that now have 10,000 Bitcoin in them, but they've had 10,000 Bitcoin in them since, this one had it in it since 2017. It's been in there a long time. But you can kind of explore all the different things there are here and see what are all the different whales doing. There's a series of a lot of addresses that all have 8,000 Bitcoin in them. And these are a lot of addresses that first started accumulating back in 2018, and they actually haven't done much since then. Okay, so there are some addresses that look something like that. Now remember, Just because a whale buys does not necessarily mean it is the bottom, right? It does not mean that. Again, if you go back to 2018, remember the price of Bitcoin dropped another 18% before we actually hit the bottom. However, one of the things to consider is that, when you think about these moves, if you buy it, if you had bought Bitcoin at 4K, which is basically what they did, I think they got it at 3,900 as opposed to say 3,100. Is that something you're really gonna stress out about, just a year later or even just a few months later, right? Does it really matter, right? Does it really matter that much? So again, I would argue that, in a Bitcoin bear market, DCA generally is the way, okay? And remember that just because someone has a lot of money doesn't necessarily mean they're going to do any better than you. It just means that they might lose a lot more money than you if they also let their emotions rule. That's another thing that I often see is that people say, well, since institutions are buying Bitcoin, they'll never let it drop a certain percentage. Look, I mean, institutions have been involved in equities for a long time, and there's still tons of equities that drop 80, 90%, right? I mean, this is nothing new. Institutions can lose money. Hedge funds can lose money. Only, I think, 3 hedge funds even outperformed the S&P last year. So you should assume that everyone, including the people with a lot of money, are still great at losing money because a lot of people trade on their emotions, right? They trade on their emotions. The buy high, sell low mentality. What you need to do is you need to come up with a strategy. You need to stick to it. Stop with the emotional trading, and recognize that, generally speaking, Bitcoin trends higher with time. It is relatively impossible to time the bottoms exactly, but we can look at long-term indicators to try to identify where those macro bottoms are. And we actually went over a lot of different charts yesterday in the Into the Cryptoverse premium video, which gives you an insight into what's included there. So again, if you want access to that, intothecryptoverse.com, we have a sale going on. Make sure you check it out. We talk about a lot of different things from a data-centric perspective. So check it out. You can always lock in the lower rate. As long as you do not cancel, you'll get access to the on-chain charts, the ROI charts, logarithmic regression, social statistics, derivatives data, etc. Make sure you check it out, intothecryptoverse.com. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll continue to update you on what our whales are doing as time goes on. And remember, on-chain data is dubious at best because it could theoretically be manipulated. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.